My manager promised his manager that we could get our work done 2 weeks before the agreed timeline, so I made him work on Saturday with me. Almost 10 years ago, I worked at a company where my department analyzed survey and secondary data, compiling into handbooks each quarter. After 6 months of joining the department, my manager, who joined us 2 months after me, reorganized our tasks in an attempt to improve our efficiency. This manager was promoted internally and was notorious for kissing up to management. He was technically not qualified for the promotion due to a different background required for our department. But one of the C-suite members liked him a lot. He did have some expertise in other areas, but generally had an unpleasant personality, so many people in the company didn't like him much. Along with 3 new projects, I was assigned the handbook task for the first time. The meeting was in February, so my first handbook would be for that year's quarter 1. In the meeting, I also asked my colleague who had managed the project for 4 years to explain me the usual timeline. She said it took 6 months, a time frame agreed upon by management for years, considering the person handling it would also have other important projects. This meant for quarter 1 data, the printed copies of the handbook need to be ready by 30th of September. The 6 months period includes collecting the analysis from survey managers, and for secondary data, I would have to contact the data owner and do the analysis myself. I also have to work closely with the outsourced company that does the design and printing. I carried out the handbook project smoothly along with my other tasks, and by late July, the only thing left for me to do was to proofread the content. The next procedure required me, my manager, and the designer to review and finalize every page before sending it to the unit head for approval. Printing and delivery take about 2-3 weeks, so we aim to submit the design by mid-August and confirm the final version for printing by the last week of August. However, on the last Friday of July, a whole 2 weeks before our target timeline to send the design to the unit head, this conversation happened. Manager: OP, I need you to finalize everything today because we are sending the design to the unit head on Monday. Next Monday? Why? We have 2 weeks. Well, the unit head wants to see some changes around here, so I thought we could speed up the publication of this handbook to start. I told the unit head we would send the design to her on Monday. Okay, you could have discussed this with me first. I mean, the proofreading is almost done. I can done it by today. But we still need to sit down with the designer to finalize and sign off. The appointment is in a week. Manager: can you do it tomorrow? Go ask the designer. Now, it was not normal in our company to come to the office and work on weekend. And of course, I already had a plan for that weekend, so this was really annoying to me. At least I knew that the designer would have no issue moving it to the next day, because he is very cooperative. I can try, but tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not sure if he can make it. And are you sure we want to rush this? Because even if we meet the designer tomorrow, the hard copy will be delivered just 2 weeks earlier than the normal deadline. Is it that significant? Manager: yes, just go ask the designer now. So I called the designer and, as expected, he had no problem meeting on Saturday. Me: Mr. Manager, the designer is okay to meet tomorrow. Is 10 a.m. okay with you? Manager: huh? Puzzled look. Me: you also need to be there for the sign-off. Manager: I do? Me: yes, you literally need to sign off on the final version to send to the unit head. It's the normal procedure. To be honest, he didn't need to be there aside from following procedure. He had already seen the design a few times and likely wouldn't have contributed much to the meeting. I would have loved for him not to be there anyway. But at that point, I was quite excited to make him come to the office on the weekend when he obviously didn't realize he also had to be there with the designer. Manager: I cannot tomorrow. I'm going somewhere until Sunday. Me: well, if you want to send this to the unit head on Monday, you have to be here tomorrow. Manager: oh, let me get back to you. About half an hour later, he came up to me with the sourest face ever. 10 a.m. tomorrow is fine, and walked away. I'm guessing he must have pissed off someone when he had to change or cancel his weekend plan. So the next day he came in 1 hour late, not smiling at all, and was rude to the designer and me. He was really unhappy to be in the office on that day, but we got it done by 1 p.m. The following week, the story of how I made my manager come to work on Saturday was told around the company. Apparently, the plan that he had for the weekend was a group trip with someone of his buddies who also worked in the company, and he had to make new arrangements to get to the place by himself and arrived late. A lot of people thought it was really funny, including the unit head and some of his buddies, and laughed at the image of him walking into the office on Saturday for some trivial yet necessary work. Nevertheless, the next 2 years that I worked on the handbook, he never promised anyone to have the handbook ready before the 6 months timeline. Well, bravo! Because I hate when managers want everybody else to work on weekend except for them. So OP was like, well, if I have to come in, you have to come in. Amazing! Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, because I really want to get to 150 subscribers as soon as possible. You want to put how much concrete in your Civic? Many years ago, I worked in a locally run store that sold a bit of everything. I was the low-paid teenager that carried heavy things to the people's vehicles. While working one day, I get called over the radio that a customer needed 12 bags of concrete, 80 pounds each. I was expecting to see a pickup truck or something similar backed up to our loading area. Instead, I saw a small Honda Civic there waiting for me. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked the driver to relocate momentarily, as I had someone come in to pick up multiple bags of concrete. Imagine my surprise when they told me they were the customer I was waiting for. I asked the customer how much they wanted to take in each trip, as I believe the nearly 1,000 pounds of concrete might be too much for such a small vehicle to handle safely. The customer became aggravated and insisted that they were taking it all at once. I quickly ran this past the store owner to make sure I wouldn't be held liable for any damages. I ran back, apologized to the customer, and began loading the bags. As I loaded everything up, the customer made several quips about how the customer is always right, and that I was too young and naive to understand that vehicles are engineered with a margin of safety. It quickly became apparent that there was no play left in the suspension, but at this point I just stopped questioning things. I couldn't fit all of the bags in the trunk, so the customer cleared their backseat and I loaded that up as well. Upon leaving the loading area, you could clearly hear things rubbing. As the car went to exit the parking lot, it passed over the elevation change between the lot and the road. There was a loud pop of something breaking, followed by scraping. I could see that the driver was irate in the car. After a moment, they got out, looked around and under their car. The guy sheepishly asked me for my cell phone because his had died and he needed to make a few phone calls. A short time later, a tow truck came to remove the car and the guy waited in our lot for nearly an hour until his wife could come pick him up. I could imagine the surprise on the tow truck driver, who is like, okay, towing this Civic. Huh? Why is it so heavy? Talk to the boss. About 14 years ago, I was working IT for a large medical center, one of several owned by the same people. The regional CIO personally put me in charge of setting up and issuing laptop to doctors and other medical staff to go out and see patients in their homes when they were unable to come to the hospital for any number of reasons, including disability, lack of adequate transportation, etc. When we got a new shop supervisor who was only promoted to that position exactly 1 year to the day after being hired from the outside, something that left myself and a lot of other IT techs very upset. He made it abundantly clear that he was going to make several people's lives miserable, including mine. He looked at my Outlook calendar. We all had to share access to our calendar with him to see when I had someone scheduled to pick a laptop up, do their 3-month software update, etc. Then, a few minutes before the person was supposed to arrive, He would order me to do some manual project halfway across the hospital that he could have just as easily done himself or delegated to one of the new people. If I tried to tell him that I had an appointment, he threatened to write me up for insubordination. Cue malicious compliance. One day, the regional CIO was due for his 3-month update. Right on cue, the shop sub tasked me with unboxing then installing monitors for the first floor. About 15 minutes later, when the regional CIO arrived, he called to ask when I returned to the office. I headed back up right away. The shop sub didn't know and never met the regional CIO, so the shop sub had no clue who he was dealing with. When I arrived, the CIO asked the shop sub to leave the room. He asked me what was going on, since I was always punctual and thorough to a fault. I told him about the shop sub making several of the lives of anyone he disliked miserable, with reassigning trouble tickets in multiple random floors at the last second, just as they had projects scheduled, or in my case, as I had appointments close to arriving for the laptops. The CIO even asked me why the shop sub always seemed to be out of the office most times the director came up, and could never get him on the phone. I just told him the truth. He's been much too busy chasing skirts and shooting the breeze with his friends, sir. When the CIO asked if the shop sub had a girlfriend on the side, my response was, "Which one? He has us too busy running around to count them." He told me to wait outside the office for a few minutes and brought the shop sub back in to have come to Jesus moment with him. The shop sub was put on 90 days unpaid suspension and was written up for gross insubordination for talking back to him, among other things. The CIO even asked HR to start an investigation to see what other department regulations he violated. And then I was looking through the comments and I found out that the guy was fired not long after this all happened. So, malicious compliance worked. Yay! Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can also watch that awesome video or this awesome playlist. See you next time!